Hello everyone, my name is Lennard and I'm an application engineer for Rigel Medical. We're just going to wait on for a few moments for any more people to arrive, but we'll just start in a minute or two. Hello everyone, my name is Lennard, application engineer for Rigel Medical. This CPD certified presentation today has been developed to help educate biomedical and clinical professionals as an introduction to infusion device testing and infusion devices in general. Firstly, we'll have a quick overview of our company, followed by an introduction on infusion devices, and in the main part of the presentation, we'll look at the different types of infusion devices, their infusion characteristics, and some of the problems that are associated with infusion. The final part of the presentation will help understand the different methods involved in testing infusion devices and why performance testing is so vital in healthcare organisation. And on the back of that, we'll take a look at the traditional methods and why some of the more modern infusion device analyzers are beneficial. Okay, so firstly, a little bit about ourselves at Rigel Medical. We're renowned globally as a designer and manufacturer of reliable, portable and compact biomedical test equipment. Our reputation has emerged from 38+ years of experience, and our products ensure that critical medical equipment is safe to use throughout the device's life cycle. As a metrology specialist for almost 4 decades, our innovative testing solutions have been mitigating risk in healthcare environments. So we've got over 40 distribution partners covering 110 countries, with 7 Rigel authorized global service centers. Our manufacturing site and main office is based in Peterlee in the UK, but we also have a US office based in Tampa, Florida. So those are 2 operating locations. Infusion devices. It's estimated that 80% of hospitalized patients receive intravenous therapy, or IV, and infusion devices are used extensively in clinical settings and patients' homes, providing perioperative care, critical care and pain management. The infusion fluids must deliver to the patient in a predetermined and consistent manner. And these are a variety of designs, and this provides the ability to feed, hydrate, medicate, or replicate blood loss. So it's an infusion system is a process by which a device delivers fluids, nutrition, medication in a predetermined and consistent manner. They're capable of delivering medications such as insulin, hormones, antibiotics, chemotherapy drugs, as well as pain relief, and also the ability for feeding the patient. An infusion pump is an electronic device used to control the administration of intravenous fluids to deliver measured amounts at careful and regulated rates. They often incorporate a mechanism or structure that mediates the transport of the infusion liquids across the membrane. This is typically done using needles, and this has the best, most immediate effect. Occasionally as well, subcutaneous or epidural. are used, but this is the amount of fluid that's restricted here to as low as 3 ml for subcutaneous methods. They've been used for clinical practices such as infusion IV therapy to infuse liquids, medication, or nutrients into a patient's circulatory system. And they also can produce quite high but controlled pressures. However, these values do vary between different pumps. That's something we'll come on to later on in the presentation. Okay, so treatment is delivered through infusion directly in the bloodstream, and it needs to be accurately controlled and often includes calculations based on the patient's physical condition. So the prescription and administration of medication is an imprecise art, as many dosages such as paracetamol are not based on body weight, but more have a daily maximum limit, independent of the size or weight of the patient. Okay, so infusion pumps could administer fluids in cases where other methods would be impractical or even unreliable. So, for example, they can administer fluids at 0.1 ml per hour, which would be too small for a drip to provide. It provides medication at predetermined intervals, for example, every minute. Provides repeated boluses requested by the patient, and this is typically up to a maximum per hour, sometimes known as patient-controlled analgesia as an example, and also administer fluids where volumes vary by the time of day and also for extended durations. Occlusion is an obstruction or closure of a passageway or vessel. So what an infusion pump is doing is it's trying to maintain sufficient pressure on the fluid to cause it to flow at a set rate, but it also detects any resistance to the flow, and that allows the pump to increase pressure to maintain that set flow rate. But blockage in infusion devices causes pressure to build up, which can reduce the flow and then cause harm to the patient. Most infusion pumps have a predetermined occlusion pressure threshold, where an alarm activates once the pressure exceeds this limit. The occlusion pressure alarm is set too high. The harmful effects can be prolonged prior to alarm. Therefore, testing the occlusion pressure is crucial to infusion pump safety. So some of the problems associated with infusion, some have already been mentioned here. So occlusion is one. Syringes emptying is an issue. It's a serious problem. Air in the tube. It's important that the reliability of medical devices such as infusion pumps is really important, because these devices are used on patients and patients that are likely to be in critical condition. Millions of infusion devices are used in hospitals and in the community every year. The vast majority of infusions are delivered safely without any adverse events. However, incidents still occur, and they continue to dominate adverse incident reports, with at least 1,000 incidents investigated by the MHRA between 2000 and 2005, 2010 in the UK alone. The majority of problems relate to over-infusion of drugs. So this is either due to user error with dosage and patient data. It can also be to do with the product design and any malfunction within the device. But in many fatal incidents, faults aren't typically specified as being from the pump. They're very rare for malfunction, so it's been main contributing factor is user error. So genuine infusion pump malfunctions rarely occur, except when a pump has been mishandled, dropped, or damaged. However, also faulty or mismatched batches of administration sets could also cause problems. Here's some of the outcomes of adverse incidents. So we can see that device-related incidents, typically 11%, 21% as user error, but 68% has been the cause hasn't been established. So more problems with infusion. So the FDA 2005 to 2009, more than 56,000 reports of adverse events associated with the use of infusion pumps, including numerous injuries and deaths. 87 infusion pump recalls to address identified safety concerns. This is according to FDA data. Most serious errors almost always involve the use of infusion devices. Intravenous IV administration always carries risk of tissue damage. Correct occlusion monitoring can reduce the risk of tissue damage. Incorrect flow rates or bolus could lead to an over or under treatment. So there are many dangers when using infusion devices, and they need to be minimised for patient safety. And for this reason, most infusion devices incorporate these detection warnings and alarm systems, which you should have probably already seen, such as air detection, any upstream pressures, any occlusions, and also the emptying of syringe alarms. Oh, one more, there's battery signals as well. So when there's a low battery, the infusion device has to sound. So what are infusion devices? Well, they're common devices found for delivering fluids to the patient, as we've already reiterated. However, there are multiple methods of delivery, different technologies. Okay, so there's a variety of different types. They all have individual procedures and mechanisms. However, they share an aim to provide accurate infusion at a predetermined rate over a set period of time. Infusion pumps in general use positive pumping actions, which provide an accurate flow. And this is the flow rate of fluids or drugs from the control panel. Pumps are designed for a variety of applications, and their performance varies depending on the delivery volume, so whether it's long or short-term accuracy, and also the speed of which the infusion is desired. All infusion pumps have commonalities, including the alarm systems and the control panel to set rates. So they have this uniformity, but there are variants, such as explained here, where we spoke about the delivery volume, the accuracy, and the speed of infusion. Types of infusion devices. So we've got simple gravity controllers, and they use a clamping action to vary the flow with the force of gravity. We've got volumetric pumps, and they employ a peristaltic pumping mechanism, and then syringe pumps, which work by pushing a plunger at a set rate. Okay, so the IV bag for gravity controllers is situated higher than the patient's heart. So this contains a drip chamber, and the gravity is fed towards the patient using a roller clamp to control the flow. The timing how fast the drops fall through the tube drip chamber enables a flow rate to be determined, and the greater the bag height, the quicker the flow rate in millimeters per drop. So each 300 millimeter increase in height of the IV bag produces approximately 25 millimeters of mercury of pressure. Now this method of infusion is often used in emergency rooms by paramedics and ambulances, but you may also have seen it used by athletic trainers. We're also talking about the roller clamps. So what they do is they control the rate at which the fluid infuses, and what it does is it just simply squeezes the tubing tightly, and that makes the tubing narrow and reduces the flow rate, but then allowing that clamp to be released allows fluid to then flow at a faster rate. Syringe drivers, they utilize an electronically controlled electronic motor to depress the plastic syringe position piston plunger, and this is to drive the fluid into the patient at those predetermined rates. The electronics control the speed. This is the flow rate. The distance is the volume infused, and the force or the pressure that the syringe plunger is pushed. So the person that's using this, the operator, must use the correct model and size of the syringe for the device, and also ensure that it's correctly positioned, and frequently monitor to maintain those expected predetermined doses up to 100 mils per hour, I believe, for the syringes. They're typically the preferred choice for lower volumes and low flow rates, and it can infuse small volumes of fluid over an extended period of time whilst maintaining a constant rate. Users should still be aware that the flow rate delivered at the start of any infusion is going to be slightly less than the predetermined value, and this is just to do with that mechanical slack which must be taken out before the steady flow rate is achieved. So we're dealing with something that's mechanical. There's always going to be a delay before that flow rate is achieved. So low flow rates, it can sometimes take some time before any fluid is actually delivered to the patient. So as you can imagine, a very low flow rate, it's going to take a while for the fluid to actually reach the patient's venous system. We've got the volumetric infusion pump. This is the most sophisticated type of pump, which forces fluid into the patient's vein under pressure and resistance. The IV bag is situated higher than the pump, and the pump utilizes a linear peristaltic action or uses a special cassette known as a piston cassette to control the infusion fluid. So it's a set of rollers, and this pinches the the tubing to push the fluid towards the patient, as is shown in this image. This is what gives that peristaltic action to the fluid, and that will be shown on the graph in the next few slides. Must be considered that this type of pump is not accurate or appropriate for the delivery of fluid rates at lower than 5 ml per hour, and this relates back to that peristaltic action through the tubing. It uses rippling wave motion, which can be linear or rotary. Cassette type pumps have a plunger mechanism built into the tubing set where the stepper motor drives the motion. This valve can sometimes be known, or it might be known to you, as a free flow mechanism. For ambulatory pumps, they're small, light, battery-powered syringeal correct cassette measurements, which are designed to be portable, wearable, giving the patient freedom to move around. So it's for medication to be administered on an outpatient basis. So it's especially useful for those that need around-the-clock injections. Most ambulatory pumps have minimum alarms, and patient monitoring is required. So this means that either the patient or the carer needs to closely monitor this infusion. Payer consideration also needs to be taken into account for being dropped, being knocked, and electromagnetic interference. In general, critical drugs which require a constant flow should not be administered using ambulatory drugs. So I'll just do a quick poll to see what the most common type of infusion device you typically test in the field. That should come up on screen now. It's normally 50-50 between volumetric and syringe. That's what we're seeing now. I'll just wait until the majority of you have voted. And with the presentation. Okay, thank you. Edged out slightly by the syringe drivers, most commonly seen for testing. So we've got the back to the fluid delivery patterns of these infusion devices. Depends on the type of pump that's used. The typical flow patterns for volumetric syringe and ambulatory pumps at a flow rate of 1 ml per hour. Each pump delivers fluid accurately at 5% of the set flow rate over long periods. So we've got accuracy over a long period, so the average flow rate is okay, but only the syringe pump is delivering fluid accurately over very short periods of time. And this goes back to the intermittent bursts from the peristaltic action of the volumetric pump, and then also the administered bursts caused by the ambulatory pump, so the patient delivered. So some of the infusion characteristics in this section will cover the factors associated with infusion devices, and also how, so that's things like if there's resistance in the IV line, what's causing that as well, and how infusion devices can come over these levels of resistance. So in an infusion system, the pump uses pressure to overcome resistance. The greater the resistance in the IV circuit, the higher the pressure required. Resistance arises due to filters, anti-siphon and anti-reflux valves, administration sets, in particular the cannula, kinking of tubing, sticky or viscous solutions, so that's whereby stiction can occur within the syringe or cassette from these viscous solutions, and this is what can cause an accumulation in pressure. The pressure available is related to the height that the bag or bottle of fluid is situated above the patient's heart. With increased height produces increased pressure. Okay, so infusion devices must be capable of delivering infusions at pressures between 100 and 750 millimeters of mercury, or 2 to 15 psi. And this is to overcome any internal or external resistance to the flow of fluid. The patient's venous system contains pressure, and therefore the IV infusion device must be proven to be compatible with pressures found in the body. So to deliver simple electrolytes into an adult intravenous site at 100 ml per hour, the pressures that are associated with resistance, and these are summarised in this table. So we've got a total pressure of 41, but notice that there's significant resistance produced by the cannula, and this is typical of what you might find in an IV circuit. So the reliability of infusion pumps is extremely important. This is because the devices are used, as previously mentioned, on patients that are in critical condition. Also due to the incidents that we've read about, that we need to adequately validate the accuracy and the performance of these devices. And just out of curiosity, how many infusion pump failures do you typically see during a PM? I'll just launch that poll now. Again, I'll just wait until the majority of you have voted, and then we'll move on with the presentation. Okay, perfect, thank you. So for the requirements for the safety of infusion pumps and controllers, we're talking about IEC 60601-2-24. It's an internationally recognised standard, covers performance and usability requirements. Infusion devices are amongst the most common medical devices in hospitals, often 2 or more per bed. So all tests should mimic real life settings as close as possible, which are carried out, by nursing staff when the system was initially set up. This is why testing also should always reflect what the manufacturer recommends, and to ensure that the equipment is working within its specification. And the user should always look for the specification as a reference when taking measurements, and they'll use the equipment recommended or specified by the manufacturer. So the specification will always be listed in the service manual. So the reliability is due to patients being in critical condition. Infusion pumps must be periodically tested by qualified personnel to ensure proper function. There is a wide range of methods used to test the performance and accuracy of infusion devices. The primary aim is to accurately measure delivery volume and flow rate of the infusion device and check inclusion alarms. And there's a variety of methods, and they vary in procedure and equipment, but fundamentally the same, and it's just to measure these parameters over a set period of time. Typically for a PM, it's generally between 10 minutes and 1 hour, but that would vary for manufacturers. Obviously, their durations can be a lot longer for rigorous testing. So, yeah, it's just really for ensuring that the infusion is reliably delivering what it's stating. So it's prescribed dosage, its volume, and also that pressure that overcomes any intermittent resistance. But while doing all of those things, ensuring that there's no harm being caused to the patient. Some of the common flow measuring principles. Volumetric. So flow is calculated after a certain volume is delivered. Very simple. The greater volume over a certain time, the greater the flow. We've got mass. So flow is calculated based on the temperature difference between 2 points within the sensor. So the greater the temperature difference, the lower the flow. We've got bubble tracking. Flow is calculated based on the displacements of an inserted air bubble into the flow sensor part. The greater the displacement, the greater the flow. We've got pressure based. Flow is regulated within the flow sensor to a set line pressure. So the greater the potential pressure build up in the line, the greater the flow rate. And then also the displacement of the syringe plunger. Flow rate is calculated based on the volume displaced by the syringe plunger over time. And in some infusion device sets, you'll find that they've got things that actually calibrate the syringe plungers, such as vernier calipers and other methods of testing those infusion sets. You've got inclusion and alarm pressures are tested, but also bolus delivery, and this maintains the performance of the infusion device, especially with PCA devices where the bolus is self-medicated. When looking at the accuracy of an infusion device, the system must be looked at as a whole and not just a pump or driver individually, as the inaccuracies within the measuring device need to be added to the accuracy limits of the DUT. So this goes back to metrology. If anyone's been involved with metrology, you know that when you're testing, you need to look at the total inaccuracies of testing, also known, as calibration, whereby you need to take into account any errors outside of the device under test. Even though the infusion device itself may only have a small percentage error, taking into account all possible inaccuracies of the syringe used and tubing. So really, yeah, talking about all inaccuracies. Some of you might know it more as uncertainty, so it's any uncertainty of the measurement. Got acceptance testing, reference test, typically a visual inspection as well, and a regular and an electrical safety test. It's considered to make all aspects of patient safety and that the instrument is reliable and it's covered during this test procedure. And then we've got regular testing, scheduled maintenance in accordance with the manufacturer recommendations, visual door alarms, flow, volume accuracy, occlusion alarm, bolus PCA check. Then we've got routine testing, daily checks, damage, fluid ingression, and then again electrical safety testing to 60601, 62353. But this is obviously regional specific, not necessarily one of these two. In the US, you might be testing to NFPA 99. It varies from region to region, but these are the two most common used, and they are internationally recognized. So measurement technologies for flow and for volume. The most commonly used for measuring volume and flow rate are a direct volumetric type method, but then we've also got mass measurements or graduated, which is cylinders and barrettes, but I'll come on to that. So this method is reasonably fast and cost effective. They're marks and divisions. So got this on here, the scale when using a measuring cylinder. The scaling provides a degree of inaccuracies. 100 ml cylinder with 1 ml graduation will therefore only be 0.5 ml accurate. The human eye and the level surface are critical in the accuracy. Evaporation, this is only relevant for particularly low flow rates. It won't have an effect on accuracy for any medium or high flow rates. The problem with this, it's resourceful to monitor, and there's no way it can be automated. So the way that this is done is simply by the liquid that's tapped can be read by checking the level of the meniscus, and then using that, it estimates. You still need to estimate the time calculated prior to delivering the flow, and then the rates per minute then gives you the desired flow rate over that time. And obviously, this will only give you an average flow rate, and it won't give you a direct flow rate. You need to calculate it afterwards. So this is one of the most simplest methods, but also the most accurate, one of the most accurate. So it measures volume and flow rate, and the scales determine the weight or the mass of the total infused liquid. Scales can be calibrated, so they're always zeroed out or tared. So the results are a result of the direct weight of the fluid volume, and again, so you're doing this over time. So for instance, that you use a stopwatch must be required, and then you work out the flow rate from that. So volume is so flow is a product of volume and time, and also this is delivered on the assumption that 1 gram, for instance, 1 gram of liquid is equivalent to 1 milliliter of fluid. So it's resourceful to monitor. Some of the drawbacks, also environmental control, physical disturbance, humidities, pressures, temperature and evaporation. So in labs, you'll often find that scales are in enclosures, and this prevents any of these outside influences affecting the measurements. So it's quite problematic. It's not the easiest. It's easy to set up, but it's not the easiest to get right. Also single channel only. Okay, so vernier calipers and dial gauges. These give a direct reading of the distance measured with high accuracy and precision. In a way, they're functionally identical. They've just got different ways of reading the result. Now, these methods are used to check the plunger's travel accuracy. Some pumps will come with a dedicated test set, which I spoke about earlier, and it uses this with a linear test gauge and a stopwatch to determine how far it moves during a certain time of delivery. But again, this method is resourceful and it's awkward to set up. Okay, so infusion device analyzers or automated analyzers, they allow the user to set up a test and then run it assisted, allowing the user to move away from the device during testing. They provide real-time records of the delivery rate and volume, allowing for continuous testing without constant supervision. They provide continuous spot readings, which can then be graphed to provide quick-to-read results where problems and anomalies are easily visible. So these electronic analyzers, they provide automation for batch and multi-channel testing, with some analyzers having up to 4 independent channels which can run simultaneously. And this reduces overall test time whilst maintaining a good degree of accuracy and minimizing user input and any errors associated. So these devices, they work by timing how long a small internal volume takes to fill, and therefore measures the volumetric accuracy of the infusion device, whereas the accuracy depends on this measuring chamber accuracy and also its resolution. So this is the volumetric first generation, whereby relatively accurate until 20 ml volume is perfused. So you've got these very slightly larger chambers than what we find in second generation. So low flow rates compromised. A 5 ml per hour flow rate, minimum of 4 hours test is necessary. 10 ml per hour is a 2-hour test. So it's quite a long duration for this type of test during the first generation. The accuracy for each sample is not known. And this talks about the simple equation of flow, or how flow equals volume over time. So in the second generation, such as the Rigel multi-flow, chambers are small, so 50 microliters. Therefore, flow is measured accurately over a short period of time. Flow rates from 0.1 to 1500 ml per hour, with 1% accuracy after 100 microliters. Each sample is 1% accurate. Tests can be accurate within minutes. Update rate 1 hertz or once per second. Flow rates can be shorter than typical. PCA can be tested. So with infusion device analyzers, the user will set up the initial basal flow rate and then the bolus volumes that are going to be delivered. So the infusion device will begin at that set flow rate. When the bolus is then activated, the analyzer will measure the change in flow rate and record those boluses over time. And with the Rigel multi-flow, you'll get a real-time graphical display of the increases of volume and flow rate until the bolus is infused, and the flow rate will return to that basal flow rate. One thing to note, if you are using the multi-flow, that the bolus must be at least 5 times greater than the basal flow rate testing. It also does accurate and fast measurements of flow pressures. So we're talking about the 50 microliters, as well as providing a back pressure simulation for any occlusion tests. And that runs through today's presentation on infusion device testing. If anyone's got any questions, pop them in the question or chat box below. I've also included some handouts. So this includes the slides from today in PDF format. And there's also a feedback form. If you've got time, please fill that out and send it back to the events email found in the footer of that Word document. It should only take a few moments to fill out and send back to us. It just helps us improve on our presentations. So any feedback for how you think we can change, what you think we can add. Is there anything we've missed off you feel might be valuable? Please add it into the feedback form. You know, with a lot of, we teach this stuff to a lot of biomedical and clinical professionals who also have a great deal of knowledge in these categories. So it's always great to hear your feedback so we can improve as well. But for now, I'll just have a quick look through the questions to see what we've got come through. Okay, nothing at the moment. No, that's great. If you've got any questions, feel free to email us. If not, thank you for coming to today's presentation, today's webinar. Anyone who requested CPD certificates on the form, they'll be received automatically tomorrow, sometime around tomorrow morning. So you should get those via email, but if you don't, please just drop us an email. We'll make sure those get sent out. Still no questions come through, so we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you can make it to the next webinar. We've got one coming up soon for the multi-flow device itself, so how to use the multi-flow, some of its features. That's coming up in 2 weeks. And then we've also got our electrical safety webinar series, which is always a popular one. The first of that series is also CPD certified, so please sign up to that. You'll find that on our events page. But for now, thank you for viewing this webinar.